Fire her now. The words came sharp, bright, and cruel, cutting across the sterile white hallway like a shard of glass. In front of her, a woman in a sleeveless red dress leaned forward, phone raised as if filming a trophy kill, pearls glinting under the fluorescent light. Her laughter was too loud for an office, too certain. "Know your place," she added, voice dripping with the satisfaction of someone who thought the whole floor agreed. Behind her, two colleagues in navy blazers smirked, their eyes locked on the same target. A tall man in a pale blue shirt stood just off-center, arms loose, mouth curled in a half-smile, the kind you wear when you think the game's already won. Farther down the corridor, people paused, mid-step, drawn by the spectacle. Some tilted their heads, some pretended not to see. At the center of it all stood the woman in navy work coveralls, dark blue over a long-sleeved undershirt, yellow cleaning gloves still on, the faint scent of disinfectant clinging to her sleeves. She didn't flinch, didn't glance up from the phone pressed to her ear. Her posture was steady, almost statuesque. One hand held the phone, the other rested near her hip, next to the clipped ID badge and the small pouch of cleaning supplies. Her eyes, though, focused forward, absorbing every word. No defense, no apology, just stillness. The hallway was bright, but the air was heavy. You could feel the weight of her silence pressing back against the noise. Somewhere down the hall, a printer hummed, the click of a pen, the faint, wet squeak of a mop bucket wheel turning in an empty office. All of it felt louder than it should. The red-dressed manager angled her phone toward her friends, grinning as if the moment needed an audience. "I'm sending this to HR right now," she announced, for everyone's benefit. "Let's see how long she lasts." From the corner, a junior IT tech in a gray hoodie froze halfway through a step. His eyes flicked from the manager to the woman in gloves, to the phone in her hand. He didn't know why yet, but something about the scene was wrong enough to make him slide a hand into his pocket and tap his own phone screen. The faint chime of an audio recorder starting was swallowed by the hallway's hum. The woman in gloves shifted her weight slightly, just enough to feel the seam of her uniform pull against her shoulder. She'd worn this exact outfit for a reason. She knew the shape of this moment long before it arrived. And before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now, back to her. She let the manager's words hang in the air, let them travel the length of the hallway so every ear caught them. The smirks, the suppressed chuckles, the crossed arms, they were all part of the script she'd seen too many times before. But this time, the ending wouldn't belong to them. The red-dressed manager didn't lower her phone. She angled it higher, like she wanted to catch the fluorescent glare off the yellow gloves for extra effect. "Her," she said into the camera. "This is the behavior I told you about. No respect, no professionalism. Terminate her contract immediately." A murmur rippled down the hallway. Two interns with clipboards slowed their walk, eyes darting between the group and the exit. The man in the pale blue shirt stepped closer, folding his arms as if he'd been appointed silent backup. His smirk deepened. "You're lucky I don't walk you out myself," he said under his breath, loud enough for the nearby desks to hear. The woman in gloves stayed still, one shoulder angled toward the wall, phone still pressed to her ear. Her breathing didn't change. She let them stack the insults, one on top of another, building their own case against themselves. From the far end, the junior IT tech in the gray hoodie shifted his weight. His phone, still hidden in his pocket, was capturing every word. He glanced at a passing HR coordinator mid-30s, tablet in hand. She kept walking, didn't even look up. The manager's voice sharpened. "Security," she called down the hall, as if summoning authority was as easy as snapping fingers. "We've got a problem here." One of the women in navy blazers took a step forward. Her heels clicked hard against the floor. She reached for the laminated badge clipped to the woman's hip. The plastic snapped free in her hand. "No access for you anymore," she said, tossing it down the hallway like trash. Gasps followed. Not loud, but enough. Someone's pen stopped moving. A stapler clicked and stayed down. The woman in gloves finally moved just enough to slide her free hand to the phone, thumb tapping the screen once. Her voice was low, even. "Activate Protocol 7, she said into the receiver. "Record the last 10 minutes in full." A male voice on the other end responded instantly. "Confirmed. Archiving live feed now." The manager scoffed. "Oh, please. Who do you think you're calling? Your union rep?" She laughed, and the women behind her laughed too. The man in the pale blue shirt chuckled like the punchline had landed. The IT tech's head lifted slightly. He didn't know who she was talking to, but the cadence in her voice didn't match the panic they expected. It matched control. From a doorway, a middle-aged facilities supervisor leaned against the frame. Frowning, he didn't speak. "Not yet." The red-dressed manager stepped closer. "I told you, you don't belong here. This is a professional environment. We hold a standard." She gave the word standard an edge sharp enough to cut. The woman in gloves looked up for the first time. Not at the phone, not at the badge now lying on the floor, but straight at the manager. "I'm aware," she said, her tone cool enough to frost the air between them. It was the first time she'd spoken since it started, and for a moment, the hallway seemed to take a breath, but only for a moment. The red-dressed manager didn't back up. If anything, she squared her shoulders, as if closing the space would make her words heavier. "You walk around here like you're owed something," she said, loud enough to draw a few more curious heads from open office doors. "You think cleaning floors makes you part of the team? You're a liability to our image." Behind her, one of the women in navy blazers folded her arms and nodded as if this were a formal announcement. The man in the pale blue shirt chuckled again, glancing down the hall like he wanted witnesses to his smirk. The woman in gloves didn't move. She didn't have to. The silence around her was no longer passive, it was deliberate. She let them fill it with every word they couldn't take back. A new voice cut in from the side. A tall, broad-shouldered security guard in a dark uniform approached at an easy pace, the kind that says, "I've done this before." His name tag read, M. Ross. "Problem here?" he asked, scanning the scene. "Yes," the manager snapped before anyone else could speak. "She's been insubordinate. We've revoked her access. Escort her out immediately." Ross looked at the gloves, the work coveralls, the badge lying on the floor, then at the phone still in her hand. "Ma'am, can you put that away?" "No," she said simply. The manager threw up her hands. "See? Non-compliant." Ross stepped closer, just enough to cast a shadow across her boots. "If you don't cooperate..." "She is cooperating," a voice interrupted from halfway down the hallway. The junior IT tech in the gray hoodie had stepped forward, both hands in his pockets, but his voice was steady. "I've been standing here the whole time. She hasn't raised her voice, hasn't refused any legitimate request. She's just standing here while you..." "That's enough," the manager cut in sharply, eyes flashing at him like a warning flare. He didn't move. "I'm just saying, if anyone's making a scene, it's not her." The air thickened. The red-dressed manager's cheeks flushed with something between irritation and alarm. Her friends glanced at each other, their smirks faltering. The woman in gloves spoke again, calm as before. "You've called security for an employee in uniform on shift in the middle of her duties. For what? To make an example?" "You're the example," the manager shot back. "This is what happens when people don't fit the culture." The word culture landed heavier than it should have. A few onlookers shifted uncomfortably. Ross adjusted his stance, clearly caught between following the manager's order and reading the room. "Let's just step outside." "No," the woman said again, voice like stone. "We'll settle this here." Her phone buzzed softly against her ear. The voice on the other end was crisp, businesslike. "Recording is clean. We have 6 minutes logged so far. Do you want me to proceed to full escalation?" She didn't answer yet. Not because she was unsure, because she wanted them to wonder why she was taking her time. Somewhere down the hall, a door closed quietly. And in that hush, the balance in the hallway shifted just a little, not enough for them to notice. Yet, the red-dressed manager glanced at the security guard, then at the badge on the floor. "Pick it up," she ordered one of the women in navy blazers. "She doesn't get to keep anything with our logo." The blazer-clad woman stepped forward, heels striking sharp against the tile. She bent, scooped up the badge, and dangled it between two fingers like it was contaminated. "Property of the company," she said, then dropped it into the open mouth of a nearby trash bin. Gasps again, this time louder. A man at the copier turned fully around. A receptionist down the hall stopped pretending to type. The woman in gloves still didn't move. Her yellow-gloved hands remained where they were, one at her side, one holding the phone to her ear. But her eyes tracked the badge all the way down, as if marking the exact second the last pretense of professionalism was tossed away. The manager's voice rose. "And your key fob, hand it over." "Oh." When the woman didn't immediately respond, The manager reached out herself, fingers brushing the clip at the side of the coveralls. That's when the security guard, Ross, shifted forward. "Ma'am, maybe let me—" "She's had enough chances," the manager snapped, yanking the fob free and passing it to Ross without asking if he wanted it. He looked at it in his palm, his jaw tightening. "This isn't how we—" "Follow the order," the manager cut in. "Escort her out." "Oh," Ross exhaled slowly, the weight of the hallway's attention now on him. The junior IT tech in the hoodie took a step closer. "You can't just strip someone's access in the middle of their shift without cause." "Cause?" the manager scoffed. "Look at her. She's standing here doing nothing." "She's standing here while you humiliate her," the tech corrected. The manager turned on him, her voice a shade sharper. "And you're welcome to join her outside if you want to keep defending insubordination." The woman in gloves finally lowered her phone, not completely, just far enough for her voice to travel past it. "Activate Phase 2, she said evenly. The voice on the other end didn't hesitate. "Copy. HR chain of command is now live. Incident flagged for executive review." The manager laughed a short, brittle sound. "Oh, that's cute. You think you can scare me with some hotline call?" The woman didn't answer. She didn't have to. Somewhere down the hall, an office door opened, and a mid-level supervisor stepped out, phone in hand, eyes scanning the scene. The manager noticed, but doubled down. She took a step closer to the woman in gloves, lowering her voice to something only a few could hear, but those few included the hoodie-wearing tech, Ross, and the nearest receptionist. "You don't belong here," she hissed. "And in 5 minutes you won't be." The woman in gloves lifted her head slowly, her gaze unblinking. "5 minutes?" she said, almost curious. "Then you'd better make them count." The manager smirked, but it faltered when the hallway stayed silent. No one laughed this time. No one backed her up. The seconds stretched, and for the first time since it began, the room felt like it was tilting not toward the manager, but toward something she couldn't quite see coming. The woman in gloves raised the phone back to her ear. Her tone didn't change, still low, still precise, but every word carried like it was designed to. "Proceed to full audit," she said. "Include manager directives, badge confiscation, and any language flagged under bias protocol." The hallway wasn't quiet anymore. People who'd been pretending to work were now openly leaning in doorways. Someone from finance whispered, "What's going on?" and got a quick shush from the person beside them. The red-dressed manager rolled her eyes. "Bias protocol? You really think anyone cares about your little checklist?" From the corner, the junior IT tech spoke up. "They will if it's corporate level. Those calls get logged straight to the board." The manager snapped her head toward him. "Stay out of this." He didn't move. Too late. The woman in gloves finally ended the call, sliding the phone into her pocket with the same calm you might use to set down a pen. She bent slightly not to pick up the badge from the trash, but to collect the fob from Ross's hand without asking. The security guard didn't resist. "Phase 3, she said over her shoulder, as if the conversation with the unseen voice was still going. A beat later, the phone in her pocket buzzed. The voice came through a small earpiece tucked under her collar. "Confirmed. Compliance has been notified. They're reviewing the last 30 minutes of internal camera footage. Expect contact." The manager let out a small, derisive laugh. "Sweetheart, no one up there is going to waste their time on this." The woman turned her head just enough to meet her eyes. "They already are." The man in the pale blue shirt shifted uncomfortably, arms no longer folded quite so tight. One of the women in navy blazers glanced at the other, the smirk between them gone. The manager stepped forward, voice dropping to something sharper. "You don't scare me." I'm not here to scare you," the woman said, her tone flat, steady. "I'm here to document you." From the far end of the hallway, the mid-level supervisor who had stepped out earlier was now on their own phone, murmuring into it while watching the scene unfold. The red-dressed manager tried again, louder this time. "Security, remove her." Ross didn't move. "On what grounds?" "On my authority," she said. The woman in gloves tilted her head slightly. "Your authority," she repeated, as if testing the weight of the words. The phone in her pocket buzzed again. "Board liaison online," the voice in her earpiece reported. "Awaiting your directive." She didn't smile, but the smallest shift in her eyes suggested the temperature of the hallway had just changed. "Stand by," she murmured. And then, for the first time since this began, she took a single step forward, not toward the exit, but toward the manager. The crowd's focus tightened. Whatever was coming next, it was no longer about a badge or a fob. It was about to be something bigger. The woman in gloves stopped just short of the red-dressed manager. The space between them was tight enough for the hum of the overhead lights to sound like static. "You've had the floor long enough," she said, voice low but carrying. "My turn." The manager's eyebrows lifted in mock surprise. "Oh? And what exactly are you going to say?" The woman didn't answer her directly. Instead, she angled her body so her voice carried down the entire hallway. "For those of you watching, staff, supervisors, anyone curious, this is your manager's second documented violation this quarter involving biased removal of staff. This one's different, though." She reached into her coveralls pocket and tapped the earpiece once. "Confirm," she said. A crisp male voice came through, loud enough for those nearest to hear. "Confirmed. Incident 1, March. Incident 2, today. Both logged against current department head." A murmur swept through the hallway. The manager scoffed. "You really think quoting some HR file is going to—" "I'm not quoting her," the woman interrupted, her tone suddenly sharper. "I'm quoting my files, my department, my building." Something shifted. The junior IT tech's eyes widened just slightly. Ross's shoulders straightened. The manager blinked, confused for the first time. "You're what?" The woman took one step closer, closing the gap entirely. "I'm not your cleaner," she said, each word precise. "I'm the CEO of the property management group that owns this building, your floor, and your contract." Silence. Heavy, instant, total. From a cubicle near the end of the hall, a pen clattered to a desk. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." The manager let out a weak laugh. No, that's ridiculous." "Is it?" the woman asked, tilting her head slightly. "Ask the board liaison on the line right now. Or better yet, check the lease agreement your department signed last year. My signature's on it." Ross took half a step back, giving her space she hadn't even asked for. The man in the pale blue shirt shifted his weight like he wanted to be anywhere else. The woman kept her gaze locked on the manager. "While you've been performing for your friends here, I've been recording. Every word, every action, every time you crossed the line and thought no one would hold you to it." The earpiece crackled again. "Board requests immediate status update," the voice reported. She didn't look away. "Tell them," she said. "Yes, ma'am." The ma'am landed harder than any insult had earlier. Somewhere behind the manager, one of the women in navy blazers murmured, "She's serious." The other replied under her breath, "We're done." The manager swallowed, her posture less certain now. "This is some stunt." "Oh, no," the woman said, her tone almost calm again. "This is what accountability looks like." The red-dressed manager's grip on her phone loosened just enough for the screen to tilt toward the floor. She didn't put it away, but the defiance in her knuckles had thinned. Behind her, the man in the pale blue shirt broke eye contact for the first time, suddenly fascinated by the carpet pattern. The women in navy blazers stood still, their matching stances no longer confident but locked in awkward stillness. Ross, the security guard, cleared his throat. "Ma'am, if that's accurate." He didn't finish. He didn't need to. The shift in his tone was enough. The junior IT tech in the hoodie stepped forward, now fully visible to everyone in the hall. "I knew something was off," he said, not to her, but to the crowd. This whole thing, it didn't add up. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried like it was meant to. The mid-level supervisor who'd been leaning in the doorway was now on the phone with someone, their eyes darting between the woman in gloves and the cluster around the manager. Whatever orders they'd been waiting for, they were coming fast now. A whisper ran through the onlookers like static through a wire. Words like CEO and owns the building kept surfacing, repeated, tested in different mouths. The woman in gloves didn't move, didn't add to it. She let the weight of the reveal settle, let it squeeze the air around them. The red-dressed manager forced a laugh that didn't sound like laughter. "So what? You think anyone here cares who you are?" "Look around," the woman replied, tilting her chin just slightly toward the hallway edges. "Ask them." One of the women in navy blazers shifted her bag onto her shoulder. The other took a step back. The man in the pale blue shirt scratched the back of his neck, eyes flicking toward the exit. Ross spoke again, quieter this time, but not enough to hide the words. "If she's telling the truth, we're in trouble." "You're in trouble," the manager shot back, though her voice lacked the steel it had minutes earlier. The IT tech looked straight at her, Number you are. A few people chuckled not because it was funny, but because tension needed somewhere to go. The earpiece in the woman's ear clicked once. Board confirms identity match. Orders pending. She let the words hang in the air. Then she looked at Ross. I won't be the one leaving this building today. Ross straightened, his badge catching the light. Understood. The hallway, once an audience to her humiliation, was now an audience to the unraveling of the people who had tried to stage it. No one was laughing. And the manager, still holding her phone but with no reason left to keep it raised, stood there in the kind of silence that only comes when you realize the story's no longer yours to tell. The woman in gloves tapped her earpiece once. Initiate termination sequence for on-site management, she said. Her tone wasn't angry, it was final. The voice on the other end responded without hesitation. Confirmed. Access credentials for manager ID 427 and associated accounts are now suspended. Physical badge locks in progress. Ross's radio crackled a second later. A dispatch voice. Badge 427 is red. No entry permissions remain. The red-dressed manager's phone buzzed in her hand. She glanced down and saw the company's internal app flashing access denied. Her smile vanished. What did you... I told you, the woman said evenly. I wasn't here to scare you. I'm here to end this. One of the women in navy blazers stepped back quickly, her own phone lighting up with the same red alert. She clutched her bag tighter. It's real, she whispered to the other. The man in the pale blue shirt swore under his breath. His phone buzzed next. He didn't bother checking it, his posture said he already knew. The mid-level supervisor's call ended abruptly. They slipped their phone into a pocket and stepped toward the woman in gloves, face pale. What's your next directive, ma'am? The manager whipped around. Ma'am, you can't. I can, the woman cut in, her voice still calm. And I have. The junior IT tech spoke again, louder this time. Every word you said is on record. Every gesture. Every order to remove her. You've built your own exit interview. The red-dressed manager turned on him, but there was nothing left to threaten with. The earpiece clicked. Building control confirms elevator and server access revoked for targeted IDs. HR lead requests live debrief. Patch them in, she replied. The line opened with a crisp female voice. We've reviewed the footage. Your decision is supported. Legal is standing by for statement of cause. The woman in gloves didn't look away from the manager as she spoke. Cause, pattern of bias, public humiliation of staff, unauthorized confiscation of property, and direct interference with operations. Silence followed. Heavy, absolute. Then HR's voice came back. Documented. Immediate separation. Effective. The manager's shoulders dropped as if someone had taken the bones out. Her phone hung useless at her side. The two women in blazers avoided her gaze entirely. The man in the pale blue shirt stepped away, like distance could erase his part in it. Ross stood straighter. Ma'am, he said to the woman in gloves, do you want them escorted out now? She gave the smallest nod. Yes. And make sure they don't take anything that doesn't belong to them on the way out. The hallway shifted again, this time not with whispers, but with the quiet shuffle of steps belonging to people who had just lost their ground. Ross moved first, stepping toward the red-dressed manager. Let's go, he said simply. No raised voice. No threat. Just procedure. The manager looked like she might protest, but the weight of the hallway's eyes pinned her in place. Behind her, the two women in navy blazers hesitated, then followed when Ross gestured for them to move. The man in the pale blue shirt trailed behind, shoulders tight, gaze fixed on the floor. The sound of their steps was the only noise. No one clapped, no one jeered. It wasn't that kind of victory. As they reached the far end of the hall, the woman in gloves spoke one last time not to them, but to the people left watching. Accountability doesn't need an audience, she said, but it always leaves witnesses. The junior IT tech's recording was still running. He didn't turn it off, just let the words land and stay. The mid-level supervisor stepped closer to her. What would you like us to do next, ma'am? Get back to work, she said. And remember what you saw here today. This isn't about a title or a uniform. It's about how you treat people when you think no one can touch you. Her phone buzzed once more in her pocket. She tapped the earpiece. Yes. The voice on the line. Board is satisfied with the resolution. Do you want to debrief later today? Yes, she replied. Make it brief. The call ended. She pulled off the yellow gloves slowly, folding them into one hand. The smell of cleaning solution clung faintly to her fingers, a reminder of the role she'd stepped into and out of on her own terms. A few employees still stood frozen in place, as if afraid moving would break whatever spell had just held the hallway together. The IT tech finally slid his phone into his pocket. "Glad I didn't look away," he murmured. She gave him a nod, the faintest acknowledgement, then turned toward the elevators. The badge Ross had handed back earlier was now in her pocket. She didn't need it to get anywhere, but it stayed with her anyway. The elevator doors opened without a sound. She stepped inside, the crowd parting instinctively to give her space. Just before the doors closed, she looked up once more. "You thought my silence was agreement," she said. "It wasn't. It was a countdown." The doors slid shut. The hallway exhaled. For a moment after the elevator closed, the hallway was frozen like the air itself hadn't caught up to what just happened. Then movement returned in small ripples. Phones slid into pockets. Chairs scraped faintly in distant cubicles. Ross lingered near the end of the corridor, speaking quietly into his radio. His eyes followed the elevator indicator as it dropped floor by floor. The junior IT tech leaned back against the wall, the faint glow of his phone in his palm. He replayed the last 30 seconds of his recording. The words, "It wasn't, it was a countdown," filled the small speaker. He didn't smile exactly, but something in his shoulders eased. He saved the file twice, once to the cloud, once to an encrypted drive. Farther down the hall, the mid-level supervisor was already drafting an email to senior leadership. Subject, Incident 10:04 a.m. on-site management termination. The CC list grew longer with each keystroke. In the break room, whispers started again. Not the same kind as before, these were lower, more careful. "She's really the CEO? She owns the whole building? What's going to happen to—" The last question trailed off, but the name didn't need to be said. On the street level, the red-dressed manager and her entourage stood in the lobby, waiting for the freight elevator to bring down their boxed-up belongings. They weren't speaking to each other. The silence between them was louder than the hum of the air vents. Back upstairs, the woman in gloves now folded in her hands stepped out into the executive floor. The glass doors opened automatically for her. A receptionist in a tailored suit stood. "Welcome back, miss. Daniels," she said, voice steady but eyes betraying the shock of hearing the name in this context. Daniels gave a simple nod. "Conference room in 10. We'll go over the footage." "Yes, ma'am." She walked past the polished wood walls, the city skyline spilling through floor-to-ceiling windows. The weight of the roll settled back on her shoulders as easily as she'd set it aside that morning. In her private office, she set the folded gloves on the desk. The faint scent of lemon cleaner rose in the sunlight. It wasn't just a disguise, it was a reminder. She glanced at the clock. 10 minutes until the debrief. Just enough time to send one message. She unlocked her phone, tapped out a brief note to the board. On-site management issue resolved. Recommend review of culture across all contracted teams. Immediate action advised. The reply came in less than 60 seconds. Agreed. Proceed. Daniels leaned back in her chair. The hallway scene was over, but the work it had started was only beginning. By the next morning, the building's gossip channels were saturated. In group chats, someone had already clipped the key 30 seconds from the junior IT techs recording the part where Daniels said, "It wasn't, it was a countdown." The video spread faster than anyone expected. In the operations meeting at 9 a.m., 3 department heads sat unusually quiet. They'd heard from legal overnight. HR's full incident report was attached to an all-staff email. Summary: termination for cause, breach of conduct and policy, effective immediately. No names were redacted. On the mezzanine level, a new sign appeared outside the staff lounge. Respect is not optional. Below it, in smaller letters, applies to all roles, applies to all people. No one claimed authorship, but everyone knew who it came from. Down in facilities, Ross walked the morning rounds with a different kind of posture. Colleagues nodded at him more than usual. "Saw you stand your ground yesterday," one said. Ross just shrugged, but the corner of his mouth lifted. The junior IT tech found himself stopped twice in the hallway by people who'd never spoken to him before. "You really recorded it?" That was gutsy. He answered the same way each time. Seemed like the right thing. On the executive floor, Daniels met with the board via video conference. Faces from 3 time zones filled the screen. We have to address systemic culture issues, she said plainly. That scene in the hallway wasn't a fluke, it's a pattern. One director leaned forward. You're recommending a full review? I'm insisting on it, Daniels replied. The motion passed without dissent. Later that afternoon, an internal memo went out. Effective immediately, all contracted managers will undergo review and retraining on workplace conduct, bias prevention, and conflict resolution. In the lobby, a few employees lingered by the elevators, rewatching the clip on their phones. The sound was low, but the moment was unmistakable. Daniels, gloves still on, staring down the manager who'd just been fired. I'm here to document you. The words hung in the air even without volume. By evening, someone had posted the clip anonymously to a private industry forum. The comments poured in, some shocked, some cheering, a few defensive, but the thread title said it all. When the CEO shows up in uniform. Daniels didn't read it that night. She was on another call, planning her next unannounced visit to a different property. The gloves sat on Daniels' desk, folded neatly in the corner, their bright yellow dulled slightly by yesterday's use. Sunlight poured through the glass, catching on the faint creases where her hands had flexed inside them. She reached for them, not to put them on, but to weigh them in her palm. They weren't just part of a disguise, they were a reminder of the distance between perception and reality, of how quickly people decide who you are before you speak. The board meeting had ended an hour ago. Policies were already in motion. The former manager's access was gone from every system. But the emails Daniels cared about most were the ones from employees she'd never met, short, anonymous notes sent to a generic inbox. Thank you for standing up. It means more than you know. Maybe things will change now. She slipped the gloves into a drawer, not out of sight, but where she could reach them. Not done yet, she murmured to herself. On her way out, she passed the same hallway where it had happened. The space felt different now, not because the walls had changed, but because the air carried the memory of a moment that had bent the balance. Two interns walking by stopped when they saw her. One started to thank her, but Daniels lifted a hand. Just do your work, she said, and don't ever think someone's title decides their worth. They nodded and she moved on. Outside, the city was alive with the usual rush horns, footsteps, 1,000 parallel stories unfolding. Daniels stepped to the curb, her driver already waiting. As the car pulled into traffic, she glanced back once at the building. She knew her presence would fade from the gossip in a week, maybe less. People would move on. But the next time someone thought about cutting a colleague down in public, maybe they'd remember the woman in gloves who didn't raise her voice, only the stakes. Her phone buzzed with a calendar reminder. Site visit, Uptown Complex, 9 a.m. tomorrow. She smiled faintly. The gloves would come with her. Because the lesson wasn't finished. And dignity, she knew, didn't require shouting. It required showing up.